The giveaway for the WS6 ends this Wednesday. Click the link in the description. Buy a mug or a digital download and get entered to win one of the last great Pontiacs ever made and one of the cleanest examples of a Firebird Trans Am WS6 that I've ever seen. Unmodified goes a long way, exhaust notwithstanding, of course. Once again, click the link in the description, whynotyogear.com, buy a mug, digital download, and get entered to win the 6-speed manual WS6. And now, the exact opposite of an early 2000s General Motors product. An early 90s Mercedes. You're going to get mad from what I have to say. I'm better than you. I think slower than you. I don't get frustrated when a new piece of technology isn't instantly intuitive. I focus on good news when meeting someone for the first time. I compliment in public and criticize in private. I understand bear and bull markets. My viewpoints are not my identity, nor is my party affiliation. I earn enough money in order to buy time to exercise. I breathe when lifting weights. I move my sex toys from under the sink and into a toaster oven box and up on the top shelf of the closet when you visit with your kids. The news doesn't concern me. Bollinger Bands and candle charts interest me. I leave early enough to account for traffic. I don't want to show off, but I do want to be comfortable. I want quiet. I want to be isolated from people who are too confident to learn and too angry to change. I fill my car with premium, and I don't look at the price. I have a separate bedroom just for coming. I plan for your mistakes. I'm better than you. And I drive a 1992 Mercedes 300E. This is from when a Mercedes was a Mercedes. When Mercedes were at their peak, and Toyota was trying to copy. The tragedy was that Toyota was surpassing Mercedes in quality with their Lexus line in 1992, but the American public was too brand drunk to notice. Not that Mercedes was coasting in 1992. No, they weren't. They were just confident. Yes. And they were right to feel superior. Because listen to this.
An early 90s Benz is something I always kind of wanted, to be honest with you. I was originally looking for a diesel because diesel Mercedes-Benz is diesel Mercedes-Benz. And I kept trying when I was out west to find a decent one, and I never was able to come across one that had the odometer working. I don't like the thought of not knowing how many miles are on the car. And I was going to look at a 190E manual diesel. but the guy would not open up on a Saturday, even with me cash in hand, to buy the car. So I'm like, well, that's it. So I ended up looking one last time online, and this car had just popped up at a corner dealer in, I think it was Chula Vista. And I Ubered out to see it, and it was like 30 minutes before close. I look under the car, and I see that it's got Ben's brakes, Ben's parts, it's clean. And I told the guy, I'm buying this car today. What does it take to buy this car today? And I wouldn't trust, at the time at least, I would not have trusted many other cars I would have picked up to make it across the country at the time.
You drove this back to PA?
Yeah.
Nice.
I had this out on the West Coast for probably 5-6 months before I detached from the ship I was on, and picked it up from my was-to-be boyfriend and drove it across the country. It was about a 4-day stint.
Tell me about the drive back to PA from California.
Amazing. I mean, getting to drive across the country in what's now a classic car, and seeing some of the things I saw out of these windows was unforgettable. I mean, I look back very fondly on all those days.
How fast did you get it up to?
Being that I was at altitude most of the time, and some of those roads, the speed limits are 80, 85 miles an hour. So it's already good, but I think the fastest I was able to get this car to was like 126 or 7.
You get this thing up to 120 miles an hour?
Yeah.
This thing will go 120.
It can. It's screaming, but it'll get there. I'm not saying where. In Mexico.
Yeah.
But it'll get there, and it'll stay there quite happily and not really care. I mean, these engines are pretty stout, even at high miles. It's actually surprising.
How many miles are on it now?
228,000 something, I think.
It doesn't look it.
No, I'm the second owner. This is a one-owner car.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Been California kept that whole time?
Yeah, those are the original plates on the car. I refused to get rid of the original registration.
Well, how are you going to swing that?
I've been just sending them a check every year, and they've been sending me a new sticker every year, and they don't seem to care.
Really?
Yeah. I remember leaving the IGA back at home, and I was parked on the first row where the doors from the IGA were, and I got in the car, fired it up, antenna, whirred up, and there's, I don't know, some young couple, like 22-ish years old, and the dude's just sitting there pointing at it like he was amazed at it, like a power antenna or something, because they'd never seen it before. And it was one of those, wow, I can't believe that this is an eye catcher for people, and I've gotten thumbs up for it. I've just gotten people, I've been parked just eating lunch somewhere, and people walk up to me and just say, his thing's beautiful, can you tell me anything about it, and everything else, because you don't exactly see them anymore. That's as far down as that goes. Or you could flip it up out of the way.
I was just wondering if you had cup holders.
Germans, 90s, no. You need a cup holder, stick it right there.
Oh, is that all right?
Yeah, the one thing, if you really need this car to move, you have to hit the kick down position on the pedal, so it stops, and then you can push it, and then it hits a switch.
Yeah.
So if you need it to, it'll move that way. But
That's
otherwise,
nice.
it's not bad. But I mean, it's a 4-speed auto.
Well, I think of it in terms of, this is the type of Benz you could get in 1992 if you were someone who was about inconspicuous wealth. Because if you wanted to be able to, I suppose, own something nice, but not necessarily have it being blasted out to everyone that you know that you have something nice, this is the type of car that you can easily get in that regard.
A big thing with this car specifically is it's like a 90s nostalgia whenever I'm in it, because it's period, it hasn't been messed with. I hadn't had to undo prior owners' wiring or messing about. It was just all the way it was. When you bought this back in the day, you're looking at it. And driving this car out west, my thing was listening to 90s music. It was just such a moment. And it's just so enjoyable. I just go on drives.
Have you had any other experience with the creations of the legendary automotive designer Bruno Sacco?
No, this is the only car I've owned that he ever had anything to do with. However, I love like the 126 coupe 4-door. I love the looks of those cars, and that's what I was originally going for. I really wanted an S-Class, but sometimes the car chooses you, and that was this case. It was not me so much as the car. It was like, this is the one. And I guess that's why Lexus knew to draw their influences from, especially Mercedes-Benz at the time, because they saw what worked. You know,
very much so. And I believe this was a phrase that you had said earlier today, was that this was from the period where Mercedes-Benz was Mercedes-Benz.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I hadn't really considered before, because if you stop to think about it, what really is the prime of Mercedes-Benz?
From my understanding, and I think many others too, at the time, this is a period in time when they built cars to engineer standard, not a cost. It was, you're going to build this as best as you can. We're going to make the best product that is possible. Be damned the cost.
Yeah.
And this is the result of that. I mean, it's very clear and apparent when you start getting in and around these cars of the Mercedes-Benzes of this era, where you see where they didn't cut costs, and they could have, but they didn't. That wasn't what they were about. After I got the car, I took it to an Indy down in San Diego. Just I told them, go through the car, change all the fluids, so that way I know I'm starting from fresh. I know what's in the car, and give me anything that's wrong, and then just fix it. It ended up, the ship I was on went into a shipyard in Portland, so I had the car in storage, and I had to drive it up. So I flew down from Portland when the ship got into the dry dock, picked this up from Coronado Island to the naval base station there, and drove it nonstop up to Portland. Mm-hmm. And the thing that had happened for that drive, about halfway through, the way the mechanical fan is mounted on here, there's a bearing and an aluminum plate on the front of the engine. And the bearing itself started backing out of the housing. So the fan was starting to hit as one of the other pulleys on the engine. I'm like, oh, great, I'm stuck, but I got to keep on pressing forward.
Yeah.
So I kept on going. As long as I kept the engine like above 1,500 RPMs, the fan would find its little balance and wouldn't hit anything. So it would just spin away. But as I'd stop for fuel fill-ups going along throughout the night, I'd hear the thing just rapping away. I'm like, okay, one of these miles is going to be my last, and then I'm going to be on my own without a belt.
Yeah.
However, I kept on going. It just tried not to abuse the car too much, and made it to Portland just fine. I was thinking about it for hours of when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Did not happen. Car got me there just fine. And the very next day, I made an appointment with the dealer there. I was like, I got to take it in. You guys got to fix this because I don't got the tools. Mm-hmm. So I had them go through the entire car. Again, they replaced that specialty bracket, because you can't take the bearing out and put a new one in. You got to buy the whole piece.
Yes.
And on top of it all, the cooling fans, the electric ones, ended up dying. I was going up to 5 in LA, and I just started to overheat a bit. I'm like, oh God, no. So stuck in traffic, there's nothing you could do. But I was ended up, if I would get out of the car, pop the hood, spin them, they'd start going. So I had to keep doing that every few miles till I got out of traffic, so I wouldn't overheat. Wow. Like it was a trip.
This rear-wheel drive shoebox of a sedan is part of the W124 range of cars built from 1985 to 1995, with over 2.7 million units built over that decade. The plan was for the midsize platform to begin in July of 1977, with the goal to base it on the Mercedes-Benz W201 model platform, which gave us the 190 series of sedans. Exterior design was finished and improved by the board in early 1981, with prototypes being sent for testing a year later, but it would be another 2 years before production would actually begin. By the time it launched in November of 1985, it hit the market with one of the most diverse ranges in brand history, with everything from the 200 and 250D to the 260E, and this model, the 300E. Just because it's a 300 doesn't mean it has a 3-liter engine. This was when Mercedes was kind of deviating from that brand recognition. Anyway, people say they think this is a boxy sedan, and it really isn't. The 300E had among the lowest drag coefficients in its class at the time, averaging 0.29 to 0.31. This was thanks to plastic moldings on the undercarriage and a more rounded edges for the trunk. In fact, even though it looks boxy, it isn't. Everything about this car is rounded and smooth. Mercedes touted its handling, but this thing really doesn't. Although its ride quality is impeccable, this thing has almost 300,000 miles on it, and it still rides smooth. How does it drive? It's more sturdy than the cinder blocks your dad uses to hold down the pool's winter cover. It doesn't accelerate quick, and it doesn't need to because you planned your drive. There's also a non-zero amount of owners who preserve 300s because they had the means to do preventative maintenance. But how much money does it take to feel imprisoned? How well off do you have to be before you start judging yourself for it? You can give money away, sure, but would that eliminate the imposter syndrome at its root? Perhaps not. But what the 300e offered you was luxury without guilt, because the inside is so sparse. That's the point. This is a focused luxury car. No cup holders. You should be driving, not eating in here. You earned every inch of this car, and that's another thing. It's an E-Series. But this is from an era of Mercedes where just because it's a affordable Mercedes doesn't make it any less undeserving of the name. There is no cut corners anywhere in this vehicle. You deserve all the money you make. You deserve a life of comfort, and you deserve the finer things. Yes, Japanese stuff was amazing, but it didn't feel like this. You didn't even, when you bought one of these cars, you didn't even really look at the badge. You're buying a Mercedes. That's all you need to know, and that's all anybody else needs to know.